5-day doctors' strike next week in England is off. The strike, the first of several planned for this year, has been abandoned due to fears over patient safety.
No doctor is ever going to go on strike if we don't have this, evidence that patients will be safe in our absence.
Also tonight, Theresa May makes her point about the point system for immigration. There won't be one.
Back to work for the top MP caught up in a rent boys scandal.
And a father's heartfelt plea for his little girl in desperate need of an organ donor.
It will change her life completely. I mean, it will give her the life that she'd never had.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. Doctors' leaders caved in tonight in face of mounting fears about next week's 5-day strike and its effect on patient safety. They've called off the action, admitting that an understaffed and underfunded NHS probably couldn't cope at such short notice.
Other walkouts planned for October, November and December will still go ahead unless the Health Secretary suspends controversial new contracts. Well, in the last few minutes, Jeremy Hunt said further strikes were unprecedented and would be damaging for patients. Our health editor, Rachel Younger, reports.
7 days before the biggest walkout in NHS history, England's junior doctors have responded to mounting pressure by calling it off. But don't breathe a sigh of relief just yet. There's no resolution to all this, just a month-long reprieve until the first 5-day strike.
It demonstrates that my union, unlike Westminster, are able to listen to what people are telling them. We've heard today from the GMC, we've heard from NHS England that despite us giving the adequate legal requirement of 7 days warning to stroke, that the NHS isn't able to respond in time to guarantee patient safety. And no doctor is ever going to go on strike if we don't have this, evidence that patients will be safe in our absence.
Throughout this bitter dispute, both sides have tried to claim what matters most are those who can do least about all this. The Junior Doctors' Union insisting patient safety remains doctors' primary concern. While the BMA provided more than the required notice, we have taken this decision to ensure the NHS has the necessary time to prepare and to put in place contingency plans to protect patient safety. Pressure on the junior doctors had been mounting. Hospital trusts, patient groups and many of the Royal Colleges of Medicine urging restraint, with the medical regulator making it clear individual doctors could be struck off if patients were put at serious risk.
There is no collective cloak of protection here because it's a trade union action. Every individual doctor would have to be able to justify what they did.
But all this hasn't gone away. The week-long walkouts in October, November and December are on, and doctors' objections to the government's plans haven't gone anywhere either.
With the current contract, with Jeremy Hunt's vision, things will get worse, not better, and that's not something we can stand for.
So one strike suspended, but the walkouts not called off, and the dispute as entrenched as ever.
So as entrenched as ever, you say, but this is quite a climb down. Who's winning this dispute now, do you think?
Well, it is quite a development, and I think for the junior doctors, this was perhaps inevitable. The last time they called a strike withdrawing emergency action, they gave the hospitals, or emergency cover, they gave the hospitals almost a month to actually put the plans in place. This time, just 11 days. And it wasn't just pressure from outside. It was junior doctors themselves getting in touch with their union and saying, we don't think patients are going to be safe on this particular strike. In the last few moments, we heard from Jeremy Hunt in the Commons, and this is what he had to say.
This afternoon's news delaying the first strike is, of course, welcome, but we mustn't let it obscure the fact that the remaining planned industrial action is unprecedented in length and severity and will be damaging for patients, some of whom will have already had operations cancelled.
And I think that is one of the problems for hospitals. Although there will be a sigh of relief from chief executives across England, some patients have already been contacted to say that procedures and operations have been put off. That will now all have to be reversed as far as it can be. What this does is buy both sides some breathing space. What it doesn't do is give us any indication of how either side intends to solve this.
OK, Rachel, thank you very much indeed.
Theresa May today ruled out a point-based immigration system for the UK, but denied that meant going soft on controlling numbers. Speaking at the G20 summit in China, she said such a system wouldn't work.
The Prime Minister also faced tricky questions over Britain's commitment to foreign investment and trade, as our political editor Robert Peston reports from China.
At her first international summit, and perhaps oddly spelling out how she'll manage domestic immigration, and not with the system promised by the Leave campaign.
You're being accused of going soft on the ambition that you have to control immigration. Is that right?
What the British people voted for on the 23rd of June was to bring some control into the movement of people from the European Union into the UK. A points-based system does not give you that control. I want a system where the government is able to decide who comes into the country. I think that's what the British people want. A points-based system means that people come in automatically if they just meet the criteria.
So, how on earth will she control immigration?
There are various ways in which you can do that, but of course the work that we're doing at the moment across government is about looking at the sort of relationship that we want to negotiate with the European Union. Part of that is about the sort of trade arrangements, part of it is about the sort of issues we want to deal with in relation to free movement.
Now, that points-based system she's rejected is associated with Australia, where this man is Premier. He's an old university chum of Theresa May, and he was certainly friendly on encouraging trade with us.
Australia is determined to provide Britain with all of the support and assistance that we can.
In the meeting she was thought to be most anxious about, right at the close, with China's President Xi Jinping, went as well as perhaps she could have hoped. He mooted a possible future trade deal with Britain, and on what Mr. Xi called projects agreed by Mrs. May's predecessors, code for Chinese investment in Britain's nuclear power industry, he said China had the patience to wait for her approval. Hand of friendship from China or veiled threat? Our new Prime Minister will know soon enough. Robert Peston, ITV News in Hangzhou, China.
Well, as we were saying, a points-based immigration system was one of the main policies championed by Leave campaigners during the referendum campaign. Today, one of its biggest cheerleaders, Nigel Farage, accused the government of backsliding.
But as our deputy political editor Chris Shipp reports, there was little detail today on what the government will do, even from the new head of Brexit.
If there was one phrase we all heard a lot of during the referendum campaign, it was take back control.
Can we take back control of our immigration policy?
And this is how Vote Leave promised to take back control of immigration.
If we have an Australian points-based system, then we can decide who comes here.
Today, some of those victorious Leave campaigners who now hold cabinet posts settled in on the government front bench to confirm we won't, after all, be getting the much-talked-about Australian system.
Now, naturally, people want to know what Brexit will mean. Simply, it means leaving the European Union. This must mean controls on the numbers of people who come to Britain from Europe.
And beyond talking about controls, David Davis confirmed not much else, something which didn't go unnoticed on Labour's front bench, depleted as it often is these days.
It's just been more empty platitudes from a government that just continues to make it up as it goes along.
Another Leave campaigner who had a more controversial message on immigration was the former leader of UKIP. Nigel Farage also wanted the points-based system, and today accused the government of backsliding.
Those who voted to leave the European Union might be disappointed today.
I think that those that voted to leave wanted to
You were telling a pack of lies.
Well, no, of course the Prime Minister could institute an Australian-style points system if she wished to. If she's going to come up with a new formula that guarantees we get the numbers down to reasonable levels, everybody will be happy. But it appears to feel a bit like backsliding.
Outside the Commons, campaigners urged the government to get on with leaving the EU, but inside, the new Brexit secretary said today he'd rather trigger the divorce proceedings late than do it too soon. Now, as much as I combed through the statement from the new Brexit Secretary today, I couldn't find much in the way of new information, although David Davis did say his department, already with 180 staff, would take back control in 3 areas. He said lawmaking, money and the control of our borders. But after 2 hours in the Commons today, we still don't know what form those controls will take.
All right, Chris, thank you very much indeed.
Keith Vaz made a defiant appearance in the House of Commons today as calls grew for him to stand down over a rent boy scandal. The MP was back at work after allegations surfaced in a Sunday newspaper. Mr Vaz is head of the Home Affairs Select Committee, which is examining, among other things, laws on prostitution. Our political correspondent Libby Wiener has the latest.
If he was feeling the pressure over allegations that he paid male escorts, Keith Vaz wasn't showing it as he left home today, later to the surprise of some colleagues making an intervention in the House of Commons.
Mr Keith Vaz. Thank you, Mr Speaker. Could I warmly welcome the Home Secretary to her post?
But the expression on the face of his sister, fellow MP Valerie Vaz, suggested behind the scenes things may be more difficult. One Tory MP says he has questions to answer.
Well, I'm calling for Keith Vaz to stand down while everything's investigated fully. I'm going to be writing to Parliamentary Standards. I'm going to be writing to the Charity Commission about the potential possible misuse of charitable funds. And I'm also going to be writing to the Metropolitan Police. I think there could be potentially a criminal investigation.
Keith Vaz has represented Leicester East since 1987. He was briefly a minister but resigned after allegations of impropriety. In 2002, he was suspended from the Commons for a month for making false statements, and he was caught up in the expenses scandal in 2009 and repaid £19,000 of claims. There's no suggestion in these latest allegations that Mr Vaz has done anything illegal or that money from his charity has been used for his own private benefit. Nevertheless, his own constituents are unimpressed.
If they're true, then it's no good, isn't it? Because this stands for everybody here.
That's a really shocking.
It's too silly for words, really, that a man can have that position and, you know, get involved in that sort of thing. You know?
A decision on whether he can stay on in his current role is expected tomorrow. Libby Wiener, ITV News, Westminster.
A shop owner today admitted murdering a schoolgirl after she went to buy a breakfast roll on her way to her part-time job. 15-year-old Paige Doherty was last seen on CCTV entering the shop in Clydebank last March. She was stabbed 140 times and her body was later found dumped in nearby woodland. 32-year-old John Latham, a father of 2, will be sentenced next month.
A child has died in an outbreak of E.coli in Scotland. It's linked to a brand of blue cheese which infected 20 people, causing 11 to be treated in hospital. Our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith is in Lanarkshire this evening. Peter, what more are the authorities saying about this outbreak?
Well, they're saying that this child who has died was among the original 20 who fell ill in that original E.coli outbreak back in July. Now, that prompted an incident management team to get involved. Their role basically was to try and find out where the E.coli outbreak had started and how to contain it. And they traced all of the cases of E.coli back to this South Lanarkshire farm. Now, this is a dairy farm, it's a cheese-making farm, and they make one particular brand of cheese called Dunsire Blue. Now, Dunsire Blue contains unpasteurised milk. Now, Dunsire Blue as a brand have denied any responsibility, even though that after they instigated a voluntary recall of their product, there were no further incidents. They are still maintaining that they're not responsible, but today's death certainly puts this farm and Dunsire Blue back under the spotlight.
Peter, thank you very much.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News. Blockades back at Calais, a new protest about the town's migrant camp.
Desperate for a donor, the 2-year-old in need of a new kidney.
And I'm live in Cardiff as Wales begin the road to Russia in what could be their first World Cup Championships in more than 50 years.
Those stories and more right after the break.
Hello and welcome back. As the government draws up plans to control immigration to the UK, in Calais, locals have had enough of the large number of refugees and migrants trying to cross the channel. Today, French lorry drivers and residents blockaded roads around the port, calling for the notorious camp known as the Jungle to be closed for good. Our correspondent Dan Rivers heard their concerns.
On se donne la main, une chaîne de solidarité.
Before many had had their first croissant and coffee, the people of Calais were marching hand in hand in protest. An early morning human chain formed to block the main road towards the ferry port and tunnel, fed up with years of increasing violence towards truck drivers and dockers blamed on migrants.
There are now more than 10,000 of them who are imposing their law. We really have to stop it. There are enough of them now.
Those on foot linking up with those in the preferred vehicle of French protest. The mayor of Calais was right at the front. Among the truckers taking part, Philippe Waller, keen to vent his anger. We're fed up, he says. We want the jungle dismantled. We can't live in Calais, we want to work, but because of this we've lost everything. In the tented camp they want removed, I met Gamal from Sudan. He spent 6 months trying to get to Britain and has one word to describe those who want the camp demolished.
The fascist is very bad. No comfortable life. No, everything here is bad. We need to go. We need to go.
And caught in the middle, bemused British tourists trying to get home.
How's it gone? Have you found it easily?
Well, we've got to know Calais, 2 hours.
2 hours?
In around Calais, yes. It's fun.
This protest is the result of years of building frustration and anger at the growing number of attacks on lorry drivers around Calais. The message from here is simple: enough is enough.
And no sign tonight of the protest or traffic jams ending. Dan Rivers, ITV News, Calais.
2 people have died and at least 20 have been hurt after a car park, which was under construction, collapsed in Tel Aviv. It's feared 4 people could still be trapped under the rubble in the north of the city, where rescuers continue to search for the missing.
And at least 1,000 people have been evacuated from their homes near the Spanish resort of Benidorm as a huge forest fire continues to spread. Emergency services say the blaze was deliberately started on the hottest day of the year.
Now, the father of one of the youngest children in Britain waiting for an organ transplant today told ITV News how it would transform his daughter's life. 2-year-old Monica Nahr was born with kidney failure and has to undergo dialysis at hospital 3 times a week.
Last year in the UK, 15 children died on the waiting list. Monica's family spoke to Martha Fairley about their desperate wait.
2.5-year-old Monica is waiting for an organ donor. She was born with kidney failure, and 3 times a week her parents bring her to Great Ormond Street Hospital for 4 hours of dialysis to filter waste products from her blood. Her dad was told he wasn't a suitable living donor, and so her family can only wait and hope for the call to tell them a donor kidney has been found.
We always have our phones on and we always look, and whenever we get a phone call from a private number, especially private number, we always answer and we think, yeah, right, this is a hospital, and then it never is.
So it would just change her life?
It would change her life completely. I mean, it would give her the life that she'd never had, you can say. And it'll be like having a newborn baby again, and then having her live a life from then to actually have a life like a normal child, really.
Monica's been on the transplant list for 8 months. She's one of the youngest of 157 children waiting for an organ transplant in the UK. But last year, 15 children died before a suitable donor could be found, even though 22.6 million people are signed up to the NHS organ donor register.
We know from our research that being on dialysis itself, although it removes the waste products, that the long-lasting effects are still there, and that there is an increased chance of children dying earlier as adults if they don't get a kidney as quickly as possible.
Last year, 26 kidney transplant operations were carried out here at Great Ormond Street Hospital, but organ donation is still relatively rare, and right now across the UK there are 69 children waiting for a kidney transplant.
In Wales, all adults are now potential organ donors unless they opt out. But in the rest of the UK, they have to register, and families still need to give consent. The more potential donors, the more chance of a match and a new life for children like Monica. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
Well, we wish her well in her search for a donor. And to find out more about organ donation and to read more about Monica's story, go to our website, itv.com/news.
And finally tonight, Wales take the first step on what they hope will be a World Cup run to rival their incredible success in the summer's European Championships. They're now 11th in the world rankings, and that's, 2 places above England. And they take on Moldova tonight. Our Wales correspondent Rupert Evelyn is inside Cardiff City Stadium tonight for us. Rupert.
Well, Wales have more than proved that they can hold their own at major finals, but their success over the summer is now history. The slate is now wiped clean while they aim to take their success, their team and their fans, to an altogether bigger stage.
With the taste of a major championship still fresh in the memory, there is an appetite from Welsh fans for more.
New campaign, new start, we've got to go again now.
Oh, I think they've got the players really, haven't they, to do well. Gareth Bale, Ramsey, so Gunter, I think they'll do well.
Bear in mind that Moldova are probably going to try and park the bus tonight and try and get around it.
Expectation that their team can deliver, but realisation that World Cup qualification is an altogether tougher task. The summer's success in France, where Wales outshone all the other home nations to reach the semi-finals, and then partied like they'd won the tournament when they returned, is now history. And, says the manager, they need to prove it wasn't just a lucky streak.
We know what it takes to get results in international football. Moldova, Serbia, Ireland, whoever we're up against, Austria, all tough games. We know we're a good team, and we know that we need to max out in every time we take to the field. Because when we do that, we get results.
Wales are now a team to beat. No longer the underdogs, arguably their toughest test is about to begin.
Wales! Wales!
Rupert Evelyn, ITV News, Cardiff.
Good luck to them. That's it for now. Tom Bradby is here at 10.
But from all the team here, have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.